Hey guys, welcome to the Powerful Man Show, where we help married businessmen save their marriages without having to talk about it, get unstuck, and gain clarity in their lives. As I like to say, life is too short for average. I'm your host, Doug Holt. Now let's get this started. Hey guys, welcome to the show. We have a special guest for you today. No, it's not going to be Tim. We actually have Sophia. Sophia, thanks for being here.
Yeah, definitely, Doug. I'm really excited just to come on and share some time with you guys, some perspective.
Yeah, so it's great to get not only your perspective as a woman, but for those that don't know, Sophia is one of our advisors. And so she gets to literally talk to thousands of men every single month, I guess, coming through. And at this point, it's been probably a lot more of that. So she has more data points on how men are and what men are like than probably most people in the world. And today, what we wanted to talk about is something that a lot of men say when they talk about their relationships and their relationship with their wife. What is that thing that you hear very commonly from the guys?
The biggest thing I would say I've heard from the guys, especially recently, is just, well, she likes being in control. She really does like being in control. It's what she wants.
And so, what the guys are referencing here, and guys, I've been here before, is when you feel like you're in this relationship, you're in a marriage, and your woman, your wife, right? She just starts becoming controlling. She wasn't that way before, but she likes to make the decisions. She likes to control the situation. And now you find yourself married in a relationship with an alpha woman, and you don't know how you got there. And a lot of us as guys, we're going to label her a lot of other things besides alpha woman. Guys are going to start using the B word, or she's controlling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get a woman's perspective. And then I'll also share my story behind my epiphany around this subject.
Yeah. So it's really interesting when I hear guys talk about it. And just because, especially from my perspective, for those of who don't know me, I'm a single mom. So his dad's really not involved at all. So I kind of have to be like the masculine and the feminine in just my life in general. So um, especially coming from that point of view, and I also like I grew up, I was a welder before I did this and bartending. So I was like in the guys world. And so from my perspective, whenever I hear guys talk about that, I just have to laugh to myself because we don't. And I know that we like women are kind of crazy as part of like the feminine energy, but we don't. It's just we feel like we have to because there's an element of trust that's there when you feel like you have to control or lack thereof, I should say.
Well, that's the biggest thing that women talk about. So, I mean, guys that are listening, just picture this situation, right? When you first start dating, is she trying to grab control of everything? No, right? She may be suspect of you, but she's not trying to grab control. And feminine energy wants to be wild and free. Sometimes we say crazy, but wild and free and flowy, but it can only be that way if it has masculine boundaries or walls to bounce off of. And what tends to happen in marriages is the guy starts letting the woman down, right? Or he feels he needs to go into nice guy mode. Arguments start to happen. So as a man, we start thinking, oh, geez, how can we fix this? Okay, I'm going to be nicer. I'm going to do more things around the house. I'm going to take out the trash. I'm going to do some of the things that are being complained or thought about being complained about. Or I'm just going to shut down and be submissive and just say, you know what? I don't want to friggin' rock the boat. I don't want to deal with this. And then your point, Sophia, the woman now feels like, okay, I can't trust him to do what he's going to say he's going to do. I can't trust him to hold me if I'm going to fall, so to speak. And then she has to take on a masculine role.
Exactly. And I think the other part of that too, just in my own experience with, guys that I've dated, my son's father, they're very reactive to when things happen. So when there was a big tragedy or a big decision that needed to be made, I was the calm one. I've always been like a much more like logical, I don't go into my emotions as much. And they were always the ones that were like that. And it made me just not trust them because it was just this like reactive, more feminine energy, I would say, that like wild and crazy. And I felt like I needed to be the one to contain that and I needed to be the rational one. So it's like difficult to especially be in like the dating world now when you kind of are taking on more of that masculine energy, you feel like you could never go like up because you always have to be the steady one. Um, And so when I get to talk with guys a lot, that's what they say, like, okay, well, she pokes at me and she pokes at me and, nags me and nags me, and I just explode. And as soon as they tell me that, I'm like, that's part of it, is that reactiveness, right? And I I kind of laugh sometimes because I feel like the feminine, like wild and crazy energy that you talk about is also kind of like a childlike, you know?
Mhm.
And when kids, I have a 4-year-old son, and we have this game where we like to slap each other's butts all day, but he will like just go at it nonstop. And I'm like, okay. And I have that like reactive blow up. And I'm like, that's kind of like what we get from guys a lot of the time. And it's not something that we intentionally do, just as part of like who we are and like that feminine, wild, crazy. I like the way that you put it better than just crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. So feminine energy, when you think about it, it's flowy. You think of dance, like
Hmm.
a feminine dance is flowy, it's free. But a lot of women, because my wife coaches women, they'll talk about this concept that a woman in her feminine needs to know, if I fall, will you catch me? Or
Yes.
if I fall, are you going to fall with me? And we're going to tumble down this dark pit, so to speak. And if that's the case, then you're not trustworthy anymore, right? Kind of like I have a daughter, right? So kind of like my daughter needs to know when she jumps, is daddy going to actually catch her and be there for her physically, but
Right.
also, for a woman as they get older, and I've learned this from, from trial and error with my wife, is it's more emotionally than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. If not more so than that, I would say, because there are times when we're having bad days, like even in our autonomy, like with the way that we have our cycles, it is that like wild and crazy up and down so much more so than men. And there are just some days that you just feel like that. You just feel like you're on this like up and down roller coaster of just you don't even know what, to be quite honest. Like I don't even remember having like asked to go on this roller coaster. I don't want to be here, but I know that I'm here. Um, so the way that I see it, like with that analogy too, it's kind of like the guy at the front of the roller coaster who's like pulling the lever to like start and go. Like that's what I feel like the guy can be like, instead of actually getting on the roller coaster with you. Like he's the one that kind of controls that with you, and just kind of helps to keep you together when they can just tell you like, hey babe, like what's just going on, kind of up and down today, like what's really going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he becomes the masculine, the wolf, right? We
Hmm.
use the
Yeah.
acronym for wolf is wise, open, loving, yet fierce.
Yeah.
And that's that masculine container. What do you think of when you think of Sophia? When you think of the analogy of the lighthouse and a man being a lighthouse who's always has his light shining brightly and is stable through any storm? What occurs for you when you hear that?
I love that analogy. I use it with the guys that I talk with all the time because it feels so safe. I can't express the connection and love that you feel towards somebody when you feel safe with them. And I know it's different with guys and girls, right? Like women kind of operate more out of side of this like love and safety, whereas guys operate more in actually like the love and respect realm. And so the connection that you feel with somebody, just like hugging them and like putting your like head on their chest, it just like you feel that safety that comes over. Like that's the feeling that I get when I think of that analogy. And what I try to help the guys visualize. Like we do a lot of vision work here. And then like within vision work is also like how do you feel in those moments, right? How do you feel when your wife respects you, when she compliments you, when she says, honey, I feel safe with you? Like how does that really feel? And for a woman, like it's probably the best feeling in the whole world, especially with when you have women who maybe have had like paternal trauma in the past or had something that happened with masculine energy that they might be so resistant to it now, or they feel like they have to be the better masculine.
Yeah, and listening to this for the guys listening, what unfortunately happens, right, is statistically the majority of women have been let down by a guy. Now it could be I hate to use this, but I think when I was in college, which is a while ago, it was 1 out of 3 women would be sexually assaulted in their lives. That's a
Yeah.
huge number. Now that's sexually assault, and there's other physical assault, but emotional assault, right? And so
Yeah.
here you have a woman who commits to a man. That's just your wife committing, my wife committing to me. She's saying, hey, I will be with you the rest of my life. And she's looking at me across that altar, seeing the man that I could be and the man that I am. And then she's like, shit, he let me down too. And now it's a culmination of stacked evidence that she can no longer trust guys or this masculine energy anyway. And so she must take the reins herself. Is that a fair
Yeah. And
statement?
oh, 100%. That's how I felt in a lot of my relationships, like especially with his dad, because he was explosive and reactive, and he's a good guy and he's got a lot of pain and hurt. So I've got, been able to work through a lot of that, especially, getting to work with like the guys now and hearing like, oh, okay, that's what he's going through. Okay. And, so I've come to a lot of healings through it. But just in that moment, it was just so reactive. And I just felt like I needed to be the one to make the decisions because I just couldn't trust him. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like he'd make the right decisions because it wasn't coming as from a space of like he loved me. It was just a reaction to like what was happening, what was going on. And I didn't trust that he really like had my best interest or even my son's, to be quite honest.
And that's what's really interesting. So a lot of guys have like, I just saw a message come across my screen before we got on here because we have a Slack channel, which is, we share client wins, right? And we get, I mean, how many do we have? 5, 6 a week
Yeah.
that come through every week. And what's interesting to see, and it's hard for a lot of guys to understand this, is guys will literally be out of the house for over a year. There's a guy in particular I'm thinking of, not really a lot of connection with his kids. And then within 2 weeks of the program, his wife's moving back in. Things change around because feminine energy can detect when you are actually solid. Like a woman can come up to a man and just really understand from an energetic or fundamental perspective if he is being the lighthouse and he is grounded or not, or if it's just fake.
Yeah, 100%. We talk a lot about how intuitive women are. And I was really resistant from that for a while because, again, I thought I was afraid of feminine energy for a long time. It's still something I'm like working on.
Yeah.
And within the masculine, like it was just, yeah, it was just like you're afraid. Like you just feel like you have to be the one and be the better one. When I was like in the welding world with the guys, like I just took on that masculine frame 100% because I just felt like I had to. Like, there was nobody else, and even the guys who wanted to, I just didn't. I could feel it. Like you can just tell when somebody is truly just like confident in that wolf that we talk about. It's really is crazy, and especially like my younger sister and my older sister. I've got 6 other siblings, so just here and 4 other sisters. So just hearing like the way that they're like, yeah, I went on this date, and I immediately knew, for the behind the scenes with guys, right? Like we always talk about our dates afterwards. And there's been so many times with women friends of mine who are just like, they're like, as soon as I came up with this guy, like I could just tell he was arrogant or he was like a fake confident or he was looking to me for validation. And I just like, it just feels like weird and icky. And it's within those first couple minutes that you can really meet a guy, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons. Like, so guys get on a phone call with you, they explain if they're interested in the powerful man or the activation method. And we try to see if it's a good fit for them, right? We want to make sure it
Mhm.
works for them.
Yeah,
And
100%.
for a lot of men, what they're saying is, hey, it's not me, it's my wife, right? She's being a
Yeah.
bitch or she's being controlling or what have you. And what they fail to realize is what you're saying is, hey, she's feeling she needs to be controlling because you're in deer mode, which is defend, excuse, explain, react. And how do you actually I don't want to use take the power back, so to speak, but how do you take control of yourself so that you can take control of the whole family unit and that she can actually trust you again to make those decisions? Because they manifest, I hear it all the time too. They manifest with all of a sudden, my wife doesn't want me spending money. She wants to see that. Now she wants to know where I'm going, or I can't go on trips. She's not
Mhm.
just being controlling. She just no longer trusts your decisions because the decisions you're making for yourself haven't proven to work out as well because guys become docile.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially if they think that you're making decisions without thinking about her or the family sometimes,
Yeah.
and that's a scary place, especially coming, I know that it's both and like mothers and fathers, but when you're a mother and you're seeing decisions that are happening that you can see maybe affect your kids, but maybe sometimes the father doesn't always see it in the same way, right? Because especially like we work a lot with businessmen, so you're so focused in your business and you miss a lot of those things. I know that myself because I've had to be the business owner, the working and the mom. And there's a lot of things that I missed when I was so like focused in on my work and what I was doing. And I still do. But especially when you're a mother and you're just there all the time. My mom was like a stay-at-home mom with 7 kids. And there were so many times where my mom was just more intuitive with things that were going on because she was just there. She was just had that inkling, that feminine energy.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get it. I mean, to think about it as a guy listening to this, you're a business owner. If you're in your business all all the time, you should recognize things, right? More than
Yeah.
that your wife does if she's a
Right.
stay-at-home mom. So she should recognize the kids more. Unfortunately, guys feel lost. What would you say to a guy listening to this right now, Sophia? And he's saying, okay, I hear what you're saying, but you don't know my wife. I married an alpha.
I would say I'm an alpha. I'm a very alpha, like dominant personality, and I would still say maybe she even thinks that because, like I said, I didn't understand like feminine energy, and I never thought that I would be that person. But she does, and it just needs to be found and led by you, honestly. And a lot of the times, like women have wanted to like talk about like the love languages or how to build their relationship together, but especially if you guys have been distant for so many years, maybe she just doesn't feel like she can anymore. And so now when you're starting to take the lead and start kind of taking on your true like masculine form again, she might again, she just doesn't trust you. And so she's kind of watching like, is he actually changing for me? Or is it because, I'm starting like this? Like it's just a lot of untrust that's going on. But I would say I would call bullshit on it. I
Yeah.
would probably bet a lot of money and just call bullshit on it. It's just because she feels like she has to right now.
100%. There's a lot of things that our men have in common. One is they're all business owners. Two, the men that come through our program are all great guys. Three,
Hmm.
they all mysteriously have married alpha women, which
Yeah.
obviously isn't the case, right? They've married
Yeah.
strong women for sure, but these women have had to go into alpha mode because us as men in society, we're taught of when we meet resistance, we do one of two things, right? We either stand up and fight. So if another guy comes to me with resistance, I'm either going to puff my chest out naturally and he and I are going to get into a physical altercation. And where most men have been taught is you never do that with a woman. And I agree. So then they back down, right? And in that backing down, what men haven't been taught is the right way to navigate this. And so they stonewall, or they actually physically leave the house. And so now the woman can't trust the emotional aspect to your point earlier about the reaction. And now she's got another kid that she has to deal with and not a partner.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like within that, is you're looking for validation from her. And that can again turn into like a pressure that you put on her, right? That you're adding to her that she has to approve what you think and what you feel for it to be valid. And I didn't understand that for a long time either, but whether she knows it or not, it adds a pressure on her, which again will push her more into a masculine state. And so like I've had a lot of fights with boyfriends in the past where they would just tell me straight up like what I was doing wrong, and I would be so upset. I would just be like, I do not do that. That is not what's going on. Like, because I'm like I said, I'm much more defended in that way, and I'm pretty straightforward. And I went off for like a couple days just mad. I was like, don't talk to me, like blah blah blah. And he would just laugh, like just be like, no, like it's fine. Like I know what I'm right, basically. And after thinking about it, I would come back and be like, I'm not gonna say this, but you're right. I'm not gonna say it again, not again. But just sometimes to have that container, like he talked about, it is really true. And sometimes you just have to give it some time because a lot of times, like as women, like I said, we have that like roller coaster that we just need to kind of like have that energy release, I guess. And then you kind of just start thinking about it more and you're like, okay, this makes sense. And then you can come back and I would say hopefully apologize. It took me a long time to get to be that person to be okay with apologizing. So yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with the way that you react to her reacting. It's again kind of like with your kids, right? Like when they melt down on the floor because they can't have a lollipop for breakfast, like you're like, man, I'm really, really sorry. It really sucks for you, bud. But like let's eat our eggs together. And then, like you have to kind of like comfort them, but also, just kind of still steer them in the right direction. Not to say women are just like kids, but we have that again, that like childlike energy of just want to have fun.
Yeah. Well, you're looking, it's looking for leadership in the
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
And, one thing don't want to misconstrue is when we talk about masculine energy, we're not talking about being a dick. Like we're not
No.
talking about being a jerk. We're not talking about being controlling. We're simply talking about an energetic shift. It's more than just confidence. And the reason it works so quickly is we use something called the triadic connection, where in the triadic connection, you know, basically, if you can imagine this, guys, it's like we talk about this before on the podcast. It's like scales, right? Like the justice scales. And when you start off with a relationship, right, you have all the good feelings and experiences are far outweighing the bad ones. And then over time, these little things, resentment starts to build up, little comments. Or for us, I know for me, Sophia, I went into deer mode a lot because that's where I was raised. I was playing competitive sports still, so I was very aggressive. But when I with my wife, I would just back down because I was like, all right, I don't want anything to escalate here. And so the scale started to tip way out of my favor, right? And to the point where the relationship just wasn't good. And I thought, okay, I'll just be nicer. That's what she needs. I'll just agree more with her. When I was running 3 companies at the time, right? It was just nuts. So I would never do that anywhere else in my life. And it's because of that, my wife couldn't trust me. And so what we do at the Powerful Man through the activation method is we start off with a clean slate method, right? Where the guy actually comes clean and clears all the negative energy to bring those scales back to neutral. And then we'll use the hidden motives technique, right? And that allows the guy to start bringing in those good feelings back into the relationship. And the third part is the live like a king system that allows men to continue to have this experience for the rest of their lives. Because it's not about being a jerk. It's about being the man your wife has always seen you to be. And she's just upset and hurt because she's opened her heart to you and you haven't shown up as that man. And she can see it,
Yeah.
she can see it in you.
Yeah, and I love that point that you bring up because we hear that quite, especially like with the name and a lot of the like alpha stuff that we have in our podcast. A lot of people think that it's like the new age. I don't know if you've heard any of like the new age men's podcasts that are out there, but a lot of them have this out, like they use the word alpha, but it's basically just to degrade women, be like pretty much screw them. We don't need them. Like that is their mentality. And that's so not what it is here. It's so much more of like we're honoring ourselves as men first. And then also, now we're also learning how to correctly honor women and being able to effectively like communicate and work together. It has nothing to do with, the guy's better or anything like that, right? It just has to do with how we work well together. And it's not better. We're so equal, just different.
Yeah, I mean, we get messages. I agree with you. I hear it all the time, and we get messages from
Yeah.
some of the wives that are like, "Hey, my husband's going to be in here for life, just so you know.
Yeah.
Like this is the best thing that's ever happened to our family." And whenever I hear it from somebody, I'm like, "Oh, you've never obviously heard any of our material." Because we're helping the men first because it started off with some guys trying to figure out their own stuff, right, and how they were going to move through it and to help their families. And then as the man progresses and leads the family, that is to provide the woman with the life that she's always wanted, the love, the marriage, the intimacy, and with the kids. Now the kids have a man that's showing up, a father who's showing up fully for himself, fully for his wife, and fully for his family. And that brings that whole unit together, which is the reason I do this.
Yeah, 100%. And especially right now there's like what, a 54% divorce rate going on in the United States. And who knows how much of the other that maybe are in like really just shitty marriages right now. And even I just want to highlight too, like it's about the relationship, but also and all of us here are really passionate just about the men. Like that's why I tell the guys, I'm like, this is about the relationship. This is about you. I watched my dad go through that. He ran his own business and, 7 kids. And he would work nonstop. In the middle of the night, my mom and dad never slept in the same bed really because my dad would be up all night on his computers running his business. And, it's for them. It's for the guys too. I've heard so many guys that I talk with just be like, man, I just feel like I don't even know who I am anymore. I feel like I lost myself. I'm just here basically. And that like pains me. You know what I mean? I had a lot of guy friends growing up with my son, I have brothers and all the guys in my life. I just think like, man, like this is the thing that can help because it puts you not in front of everybody else, but it just allows you to be able to take care of yourself and like find yourself again. And kind of that goes back to the point that we said earlier, like, are you doing this just for her or for yourself? Because women can feel when you're trying to change if it's just for her. And that's what I think is just so different about what we do here because it's about the relationship, but it's really about the guy too. And just kind of getting them like a good foundation in themselves that a lot of the times they just didn't even have to begin with or lost along the way.
That's our dirty little secret. You just gave it away.
Oops, sorry.
No.
Delete everything. No.
Yeah. No, when the men come through the program, they're able to switch their marriages around so fast. And literally guys will go from divorce papers filed to changing around. And some guys come in because they're like, hey, my marriage is good. I want it to be great. And what we do is we get the guys to work on themselves and themselves first and foremost. And that's how they turn it around, because they refined the man that they've always knew was inside them, and that they just can't, for some reason, they're grasping at it. And we're business owners, right? So we're out grind everybody. We'll outwork everybody. We'll out hustle everybody. I pull myself up by my own bootstraps. I used to say all those things, Sophia, all the
Hmm.
time, thinking I could outwork any guy out there. And I would turn to work and grinding because I couldn't find the answer to this one thing. And when I started working on myself and I had somebody else's to look from the outside in to where my perspective, that's when things shifted for me. And that's exactly what we have the men do. We have them start working on themselves first. And now they can show up full and complete for the women, for the families, for everybody in their lives. It's kind of like that
Yeah.
whole thing flying. I'm getting on a plane in a couple of days, so it's
Hmm.
on my mind. But if the plane has a problem, what do they say? Put the oxygen mask on the people around you first? No. Put the oxygen
Yeah.
mask on yourself first so that you can help more people. Because if you
Yeah.
pass out, you can't do anything.
Exactly. And honestly, too, like that guy is probably who your wife has been waiting for years.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just from my perspective and my experiences, even with like my dad or other people, I'm like, this is the guy. Like I'm sad because I've known that that guy is in there. You know, that's the guy who I fell in love with, right? Like I know that that's who you are, and it makes women sad that sometimes like you don't see that too, you know, or that you're looking for our validation to feel that way about yourself, you know?
Well, yeah. So if I look, say you and I are in a relationship, Sophia, if I'm looking to you for validation, not only is there pressure on you, but that's showing you that I don't trust myself. So how can you trust me if I don't trust me? Makes no sense,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
And we can feel that
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I have a sign on my door when I walk through it. One my wife bought me, but basically says we can, this family's energy is run by you. And we can feel your energy before you walk in the door. Is essentially what it says. I'm butchering the words, of course. It's a really nice
Yeah.
sign, but she's essentially telling me, hey, you're coming into our home and your energy affects the whole family because you're the leader of the family. And we can feel that energy before you even open the door.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. You know, my mom used to say the same thing about my dad. Like, you know, if my dad's good, then the line like trickle down was fine. But if my dad came in and was in a bad mood or whatever else, like the entire family would just kind of like explode for the day. To be quite honest, it's 7 kids. We are living in a trailer. You know, it makes for a really rough day for everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we work with business leaders, and as
Hmm.
business leaders, you have the expectation and the pressure of payroll, meaning payroll. You have staff that are depending on you. You have, open orders. You have, legal to deal with. All of these things that are on your shoulders. And then you roll that into a marriage and a relationship that isn't working the way you want it to work. That just, it's like a powder keg getting ready to explode.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the guys just turn it all inward and they shut themselves down, unfortunately, or they explode. It's one of the two things that's going to happen. And either way, it's not going to be good for the family or for the guy.
Yeah, or it turns into, like, from what I've heard from other guys, it's just like, "I don't even know if I can handle this." Like, I have all these kids and my wife's crazy and, like, shit, I had a bad day at work, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not okay right now, like, how can I handle all of this? And it is a lot sometimes, like, life just in general can seem like a lot. But that's why I think it's just so important that that's why you have to, like you said, you trust yourself first. And sometimes it doesn't get done perfectly, or it does get done a little bit messy, but you still, at the end of the day, find value in yourself and trust yourself, even through all of that, that you know that you did the absolute best you could do and more, you know, just that one little bit of extra. And you just keep working at it, you know, so that's really all that we can all do as human beings in general.
Oh, that's so true, right? Well, Sophia, so in somebody that gets to talk to so many guys, if there's a guy listening to this who's on the fence, his marriage is, in disrepair, so to speak, right? He's like, I don't know, but I don't even think this is worth saving at this point. What advice would you give to him?
Um, I would say decide for yourself first. What do you want? Because if you're on the fence yourself, it wouldn't surprise me if she's on the fence too. Or maybe she started on the fence and then you joined her and now y'all are both there. But just be the one to take that control, decide what you want, whether that's to get out of the marriage or to stay in it, and just go for it. And you at the end of the day can have a very clear goal, right? It's like really hard to get where you want to go if you don't know where you're going or what you want to do. So I would just say decide first and then just like play all out, because what else like would you want to do?
Awesome advice. I love it. I love it. Sophia, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the show today to help the guys out. And thanks so much for what you do for the movement.
Yeah, I love it here. I love all of you guys, and I'm just really thankful to be a part of this. So thanks, Doug, for taking some time out on our crazy busy Monday meeting day. And I'm really just happy to be here.
Well worth it. We'll have you on again. Thanks again. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. But as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. You see, there are two types of men that listen to a podcast like this. Those that go on from one podcast or show to another, just hoping things are going to change and realizing that they're going to be in the same place month after month, year after year. You see, I was this guy, so I completely get it. You may just not be ready. But there's also a second man that listens to a show just like this. And this is a guy who takes massive action so they can shorten the learning curve, compress time, and get results to be the wolf. See, wolf is an acronym for wise, open, loving, and fierce. Now, ask yourself, which one am I? And just be honest with yourself there. And there's no judgment on my end, but if you're ready to move from deactivated deer mode, which is defend, excuse, explain, react, to activated wolf, wise, open, loving, and fierce, then go over to thepowerfulman.com/grow and go there now. In fact, I'll make it super easy for you. I will even put the link right in the description here so you can just click it and go over there now to learn more. Guys, in the moment of insight, take massive action. Go from deactivated to activated, because like I said, life is too short for average. And I'll see you on the next episode.